All right. My name is Dr. Chetachi Okereke. I'm one of the ANPA Northern California members, and I currently serve as the chapter secretary. We have in our midst today a wonderful speaker. Before I get to him, I would like for the audience to first of all have our appreciation for joining us today. We know people have things to do. It's a busy spring, but you made out time to join us this morning, and we really do appreciate your time. And we are hoping that at the end of the day, or at the end of this session, it would have been worth your while. Permit me to please introduce the chapter chairperson, Dr. Babatunde Salako, who will give us a few opening remarks. Dr. Salako, please.
Thank you so much, our treasurer or secretary. We're still expecting the treasurer to check in. So we're glad to have Dr. Adebola Giwa, a seasoned educationist, who's going to be talking to prospective college kids today to learn about college life and their major. And we want to sincerely say big thanks to Dr. Adebola for organizing this. So Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas, we are the Northern California chapter. We're present in the community and here to assist members, the Nigerian population as a whole in the community. So Dr. Adebola will be giving us a wonderful talk today, and we would like everyone to listen. If you want to turn on your video, you're fine. If you don't want to be on the video, you're fine. So I want to welcome you all and hope you all enjoy the program. We welcome Dr. Adebola. Dr. Chitachi, you can take over.
Thank you, Dr. Salako, for that warm welcome to our guests. Our special guest of honor today and our speaker, as Dr. Salako has told us, is Dr. Adebola Giwa. Dr. Adebola Giwa is a man of many hats. He's a physician scientist, he's a medical director, he's a mentor, he's a philanthropist. Dr. Giwa was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. He began his academic journey at the University of Notre Dame, where he majored in Premed and Spanish. He went on to earn his medical degree from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, and then completed his pediatrics residency at the University of Chicago's Coma Children's Hospital. He later specialized in pediatric endocrinology at Johns Hopkins Children's Center. Today, he serves as a medical director overseeing international clinical trials for patients with rare endocrine diseases. Dr. Giwa has been deeply involved with the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas, ANPA, for over a decade. Today, he continues to serve as chair of the Diaspora Graduate Group. He's also an executive member of ANPA's Education Committee, where he leads the highly impactful workshops helping many minds become doctors annually. His passion for service extends beyond these institutions. Dr. Giwa serves on the board of trustees for the Loyola School in Baltimore, supporting early education access for low-income families. He is also the founder and president of Die Gifted Neighbor, a nonprofit organization dedicated to mentoring and uplifting students interested in STEM and medicine. Please join me to give a warm welcome to Dr. Adebola Giwa. Dr. Giwa, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome, and thank you for the Northern California chapter of ANPA for welcoming me and inviting me to do this talk. It's a pleasure to talk with you all. And thank you for that nice introduction. Since we can't do an thanks. Since we can't do an introduction of all of you that are currently on the call, I still like to get an idea of who's actually here. So I like this to be as interactive as possible. So what I'll have you guys do is in the chat, if you are a high school freshman or a parent of a high school freshman, put 1. If it's sophomore, put 2. If it's a junior, put 3. If you're a senior, put 4. And if you have a mixture, you can just put all the numbers that you have relevant. So I'll give you a minute to put that in the chat, and then I'll continue. And as we talk, I'll ask you guys different interactive questions. And if you have questions for me, please put it in the chat or wait till the end, because I may answer it during the talk. And I may ask you to speak also. If you don't put it in the chat at the end, you can also ask your question that way. Okay, let's see the chat. Okay, so we have a mix of people here, but a lot of sophomores and juniors and a couple of seniors. That's great to hear. So with that, I'm going to take you back, way back into town. For you parents out there, you may be giggling at that reference. So today is a very interesting day. Those of you who are seniors know what I'm talking about. On May 1st, generally speaking, that is the deadline for you to put in your deposit for your college decision. And for me, that was exactly 20 years. I may be dating myself. 20 years from now, I was in the same shoes as you. And I called the weekend before that uh, D-Day, not just because it was necessarily decision day, but for me, for a long time, I think till today, I think of it as the day that I actually became a man. For those of you who are Nigerian, you know what I mean. You know, you live in a strict Nigerian household, you kind of do what your parents tell you for the most part. Um, so what happened is that day I walked into my parents' room and I had to tell them something. You know, over the previous years, we've been narrowing down our list of colleges, and I narrowed it down to what I'll say is choice A and choice B. And choice A, I had visited the campus, I fell in love with it, and it had a lot of the things that I wanted in a college. But they didn't necessarily give me all the financial aid that I wanted. Choice B was also a great university, and they basically gave me a full package, and it was close to home. And my mom really wanted me to go there. She was like, "Hey, if you go there, you can come back on the weekends. I'll help you with your laundry. I'll make you jollof rice." And, she kept bothering me, "Hey, make a choice, make a choice." And one day I was playing video games with my brother, and she came into the room and she said, "Adebola, oh yeah, make your choice. Which one is it? Is it A or B? A or B?" And I was like, B, B," because I knew if I said A, she was gonna bother me. So I said, "Okay, I'll go with choice B." And this was about 3 weeks before D-Day, and something kept bothering me from that day on. And I'll get into that a little bit later. And I just said to myself, I don't think I would be really happy as I could be if I went to B and I want to go to A. So that day, I walked into my parents' room and I was particularly scared because we already paid the deposit and it was a non-refundable deposit. And I said, "Mom, Dad, I want to go to A because of dot, 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 dot." And I'll tell you what happened during the presentation. But this is one of the reasons why I'm giving this talk. I want to make sure you don't have to go through as much stress as I did 20 years ago by letting you guys know what is the timeline you should have and what is the best way to help make your decision so you don't have to be as stressed. So I'm going to help you make your next move your best move. In today's talk, we're going to go over the timeline of what it should be when you're choosing a college. What are the factors you should consider to help you make the best choice possible? And then for you, especially who are making that decision for college, or maybe have already made a decision for college, you also have to choose a major. And some people don't know exactly what major to pick. So I'm going to let you guys know what are some of the implications of choosing your major. What are the possible career choices? And what could you expect in the future in regards to salary and lifestyle? So I always like to give nuggets of information um, throughout my interactions with people. So one thing I always say in most of my talks is I give this disclaimer, and this goes both for this talk as well as mentorship and anytime you get advice from people in life. Whenever you get advice from anybody, you should always evaluate at least two things. One is their expertise, and the next is the motive. Um, so you may be wondering, why should we be listening to this Dr. Giwa person? So I'll tell you my expertise. Over the last 20 years, I've been navigating the US higher education system. I also did some rotations in Nigeria during my medical profession as well, so I'm familiar with that as well. But I've also been doing mentoring also since college, basically, and recruitment as well. So college, residency, fellowship, after fellowship, I've been working with diversity recruitment, and I've also been working on the selection committee. So I know a lot of what goes into making these decisions, both from the point of view from the student as well as the institution. Next, motive. Why do I want to help you? Beneficence. You know, as was mentioned, I have started a nonprofit organization with my wife, who's pictured here, and we provide mentorship and guidance to disadvantaged individuals, especially with how crazy the socioeconomic world is right now. People of disadvantaged backgrounds, there are a lot of systemic barriers that prevent them from rising and progressing in life. And you know, as a Christian person, is I've always felt that it's important to take the gifts that I have, which is the knowledge that I've attained through my life, and to share it with my neighbors. Ergo, thy gifted neighbor. So I just want to help everybody prevent the pitfalls that I've experienced and I've seen other people experience. So you don't have to go through that and you can be successful in life. Next thing, another disclaimer. You know, for those of you who are Nigerian, I want to tell you, your parents did not pay me to do this talk. I know a lot of them, you may have heard, you know, if you're Nigerian, you have three options. You could be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, or failure. I'm just kidding. There's stuff outside of those things that you can do and still be successful. But they did not pay me to do this talk. The purpose of this talk is not for me to tell you what to do in your future. My motivation is to give you as much information so you can make as an informed decision as possible. You have all the facts together, and from there, you can take what you want to have in life and move along the steps to achieve it. Okay, let's get started. But where even to start? So I'll actually take it from the middle. To know where to start, we have to kind of see where we want to be and work our way backwards. So it's a good thing a lot of you guys are here early. So those of you who are seniors, you know that senior year, you know, you want to apply to college. You know, a lot of you will have figured out and have gotten the results recently. So for those of you who aren't currently in the process, how it basically works is during your senior year, during the fall semester, that's when you generally will start submitting your applications to college. There's two kind of groups of applications you can submit for college. One is early action / early decision, and we'll go over that in a little bit, but basically it means you apply earlier and you find out your results earlier. And then there's regular decision. These deadlines are usually in January and February. And then in the spring semester, that's when the results are usually released. And then May 1st, as I said, that's decision day. That's when enrollment deposit deadlines are. So that's when you have to choose. So if you're applying in the start of your senior year, you make as informed decision as possible should have had a good amount of time to kind of make your list for college and refine that list. So what does that mean? The ideal time to start, as you can see, here we have the ideal kind of college timeline, and I'll just kind of focus more on the college researching and planning part. So what you should do at the start of your junior year, probably like around the summer, start researching colleges. And I'll go over a little bit how you can start researching them. Start thinking about your extracurriculars because you want to have as competitive an application as possible. So it's not just grades, it's also activity leadership. So you want to make sure you're involved in a couple of extracurriculars. So for those of you who are freshmen, sophomore, it's easier to have a more robust list if you start earlier. So start getting involved in that. Also this time you should start considering majors because your major will also help you figure out what kind of college you should probably go to that would help you with that career path. Then the fall of your junior year, that's usually when you want to start doing your practice test, like the SAT. So usually in the fall time, you may want to take at least a practice SAT or ACT. And then you also, that'll give you time to, when you do your practice test, that also give you time to study if you need to study more and take it later on in your junior year, maybe early senior year as well. Then spring, you probably have compiled, you're still compiling your list of colleges. You want to refine that list to get ready for applications. You'll want to start drafting potential essays and personal statements that you'll put in your application. And you'll also want to start asking teachers or identifying teachers who will write you a letter of recommendation, because these applications are due in the fall semester. And it's good to start at this point if you can, because these letter writers will be busy with their school year, with other people asking them. So if you get the jump on it, you'll be able to get better letters because they've had more time to think about it. And if they say no, you can also move to somebody else. Okay, so we talked about early decision, early action. So basically, we'll start with early decision. What does this mean? You are applying early. And this, by applying through early decision, this is actually a binding agreement. So if you apply and you get in, and you'll find this out within a month or two in December, you are obligated to go there. So that's a good thing or a bad thing. You don't have to worry about the whole other process. It's do not pass go, collect $50, do not pass go, you're done. Game over, you're out of the game and you're done. Low stress. Because this is the binding agreement, you can only apply to one because it would be kind of awkward if you were accepted to two places early decision. And then we talked about when you'll get your decision. And what are the benefits? Why would somebody want to do this? It actually increases your chances of admission, and I'll show you some of the stats on that later. But the drawback is you can miss out on other schools. So you want to make sure that this is a school you want to go to, because if it's a binding agreement. But if there's someplace else you wanted to go, you won't be able to find that out. Early action is kind of a mix of early decision and regular decision. Early action is early decision in that you start early. However, it's not binding. So you're not obligated to go. But you'll find out around the same time as early decision or maybe a month later. So you usually will find out in December or January. You can apply to a number of places, early action. And the biggest drawback is that if you, for example, apply early action, you find out in January, but there are a couple places you didn't apply to early action, you're going to have to wait. So then you kind of missed out on the benefit of early action if there's other places that you are considering. But another positive thing is that this will also increase your chances of getting in. A little bit less than early decision, but more than regular decision. Some other caveats: early decision. If you don't get accepted early decision to a school, you cannot apply regular decision. So, it's done, it's done. Early action, actually, if you apply, you don't get in, they can defer you to regular decision. So you can kind of think of like the wait list. Yes. So those are the differences between the two. But also be careful to check each school's policy, because it could vary a little bit different in regards to what is necessary and what they allow and what they don't allow. So some of you may say, hey, how many people actually do this? Is it actually really helpful? So the nice thing about it is it increases your chances. Why does it increase your chance? It increases your chances because the way the institution sees it is that they can kind of fine pick who will be in their class, because their overall goal is they want to fill their college. They don't want to have low enrollment, because then that's less tuition that they get. And then they also want to have high quality applicants. Because you guys are applying early, that shows a lot of commitment to the institution. And it also shows that you're a go-getter, because you're able to finish the application amidst your whole high school life and get it in early. So it's usually the people who are a little bit more competitive. So the application itself isn't necessarily tougher, but you will be going against tougher competitors. And as you can see over here, this is the percentage of freshman classes that admitted their people early via early application. So you can see that around half of the freshman class were admitted through early applications. And you can see how this compares acceptance rate. How does this look like early decision versus regular decision? So you can see that the people who did some sort of early decision, the acceptance rates was plus 30. The median is probably around 50, as you can see from this list over here. And then for, a lot of these kind of more competitive places, if it's a regular decision, then there's a lower acceptance rate, because you can imagine if half the class is already filled and a lot of people are doing regular, it's more competitive that way. So what are some of the takeaways just from that section we talked about? What you should do junior year: start researching colleges, start taking your test. You can visit college campuses early to get a feel of the environment, to see if it's something you like. And then in your senior year, you start applying to colleges. And then you should strategically choose whether you want to do early decision or early action. The big benefit here, mostly for you, is that you have a higher chance of getting in if you get in during that time, and then less stress because you know earlier. And then some of the things you should consider for this. And then, considering early decision, early action, and regular decision, I would imagine that early action is probably the nice in-between place. So I would probably pick early decision if it's your top choice and you for sure know you want to go there. And early action if you're a little bit on the fence, but you're if they told you that they wanted you, then you would be like, yeah, I'm all for you. Some of the things you should consider as you are making these strategic choices is that, especially if you do early decision, that's a binding commitment. So you will know if you got in, but you may not know your financial aid package until later on. So with that being said, can your family afford the estimated cost of attendance without comparing the financial aid packages of other places? That's a risk you'll have to take. But a little pro tip that most people don't know is that low key, if you can't afford it, you can talk to them early, and you can possibly get out of that early decision binding thing if you show that from your FAFSA and your financial package that you actually can afford to go there. But that's not something I'd recommend you do, only if you kind of last results kind of thing. And then also, the other things you can consider is FOMO. Are you a kind of FOMO kind of person? Are you comfortable with the possibility of not having other options and wondering what if? So those are the things you should consider. Okay. So, I talked just a little bit before saying, start researching colleges during your junior year. How does that actually look like? How many colleges are there to choose from? There's actually around 3,700 colleges, both public and private. What's the difference between public and private? Mostly it's how it's funded. You can usually tell which one's public or private from the name. Usually, if it's public and it's government funded, you could usually tell what the local government is because the name will be in the name. The location will be in the name, i.e. University of California, University of Texas, or, whatever city will be in the name. Versus a private college or university, they'll have their own name. Because they're private, they are not funded by the government. So it's mostly funded by tuition, donation, endowments, etc. Because these public ones are funded by the government, they usually take more in-state residents. So that's something you should consider in regards to competitiveness, both if you want to go to an in-state college or if you want to go to an out-of-state public college, your competitiveness will change. These colleges are usually bigger. They usually offer a wide variety of programs, and there's usually less institutional aid and more government aid. As opposed to private institutions, they generally have a higher tuition for students because they don't have as much government aid. They tend to be a little bit smaller as well. And they also tend to be a little bit more specialized. Some of them, they'll have their name, they may be more liberal arts focused or maybe specialized in a particular program. But they tend to have more generous institutional scholarships and grants. Of this 3,700, about 2/3 of them are four-year institutions where you can get your bachelor's degree, and another third of them are two-year institutions where you can get your, i.e. a community college, where you can get your associate's degree. Some of you may have also heard of trade schools. There are about 6,000 trade and vocational schools, and those include technical institutes, vocational training, career colleges, and apprenticeship programs as well. Okay, so now that you know that there's a whole bunch of colleges out there, how do you even know, how do you collect this list? How do you start with this 3,700? What it was for me, actually, there are a couple of ways you can start your list. You can go to your guidance counselors. Some of you may heard it from word of mouth. Maybe you had your family member go there. Maybe you're a legacy kid. Maybe they're the popular university around your school, or you can use a search engine. Also, you may get pamphlets from different places. Back in my day, we didn't have as much email. So what I actually had is I had a shoebox of pamphlets. I would get stuff all the time in the mail, and I would just put it all in the box. And then during my junior year and then the summer before my senior year, I just started going through the box and then picking out the colleges. Where can you guys go to narrow your search? I had a list here of some nice resources and what they offer. So a lot of these search engines are really nice. You can filter them by different things such as majors, the costs, what are the graduation rates, financial aid, acceptance rates, reviews. Some are even nice where you can, if they all use a common app, which is how you apply, you can use these search engines also to apply through there. Okay, so now you have your big shoebox of colleges. Hopefully you don't have 3,700 in there. So how do you start refining your list? There are a number of different ways to do this. And I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways, and you can start where you want and you can refine them however you think is most appropriate. So one of the first things you should consider is location. Where do you actually want to go? What kind of environment do you want? Are you the type that may get homesick? You may want to, how close is it to your home? Or are you fine going across the country? What kind of place did you grow up in? Are you more urban, suburban? Do you want to see something you're used to? Do you want to go somewhere new? What kind of climate do you like? What's the safety of the area? Um, can you drive? Will you need to learn how to use the bus or train? Do you not know how to drive? um, those kinds of things. So for me, you know, love my parents to death. But we grew up in a small house. I didn't have a whole bunch of generational wealth. There was five of us. I had two brothers, two parents, in a two-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. And I was tired of being under their thumb. Love your dad if he's on the call. Um, so I wanted to go someplace far away. I want to see something new. I'm from New York, and this is actually counter New York, sort of, because most New Yorkers love to stay in New York. But I wanted to see something completely new. I've been there my whole life. So for me, I have this map here of how you can break it down into regions. I was in the Mid-Atlantic. So right off the bat, for me, I said, I don't want to be in the mid-Atlantic. I don't want to be in a place where my mom may pull a card and say, you know what? Why don't you just live with us? You don't need to live on campus. I was like, I want to have that college experience, mom. So just to make sure she didn't catch me with that, I said, nothing here. So I mostly applied anywhere else. Additionally, I sweat profusely, TMI maybe. So I didn't want to go anywhere too far in the South. And I was from New York, so I'm like, you know what? I still need to get that street cred. I can't be going to, some small town that nobody's ever heard of or something like that. So I applied broadly. So from there, that really narrows down your list to the places that are in those locations. The next thing you need to consider is what will the school actually do for your career? So just taking the things you need to take into account is what is the ability of your intended major? If you want to be a physical therapist or an engineer, do they have a major for that? What's the reputation of that department? Um, and what are the academic outcomes of those types of people? So just taking me, for an example, I knew I wanted to be a doctor since like the seventh grade. So I needed to go to a place in my mind that had a good pre-med um, program and had a good reputation. So some of the things you could do, you can actually go to the college's website or use one of the search engines and say, hey, what percentage of people that start pre-med matriculate into medical school? What kind of places do they go after? Um, and that's especially important if you plan to go to graduate school. So this is different depending on basically, this is important why you need to have an idea of what your career is, because this will really titrate how big you want to go. So just to say, for example, just to give you an example of opposite ends of the spectrum. And through all this, I respect all careers and majors. So not to say poo-poo to any one career or another. So just to say, for example, if somebody wants to be a kindergarten teacher, and if somebody wants to be the head honcho in medical research at the NIH, if you want to be a teacher, you don't necessarily need to go to graduate school. If you want to be like a kindergarten teacher, I don't think your CV will change that much and your prospects will change that much as long as you have a degree in education. If you went to Yale or if you went to a small liberal arts school, So from that standpoint, you'd be like, okay, so I don't necessarily need to pay for a private school education. However, if you are trying to, swing for the fences and you're trying to be in the top 1% of income earners, having your name, having the name of your school, your lineage, will be helpful, especially because graduate schools will have an idea of your school's reputation, and it'll be a lot easier transition. And then also, you're more likely to get accepted to those graduate school places. Additionally, the alumni network can also be helpful. So, spoiler alert, they already mentioned in the introduction that I went to Notre Dame. So, actually, when I was in medical school and I was looking for different programs and such to go on to, a lot of people are like, oh, you went to Notre Dame? Oh, that's great. So, a lot of people were kind of impressed by that. And they're more likely to give me opportunities. I actually got opportunities that some of my peers in medical school didn't have, who went to other places just because of the Notre Dame name. And then later on, I did my training at Hopkins, and getting jobs have been much easier. It's a lot more of me interviewing them because they're like, oh, okay. Oh, you went to Hopkins. I mean, there's always this little bit of eyes bulging a little bit. It's like, okay, my guy. Hey, how can I help you? So that's something that's helpful and something to consider when do you need a big name? Do you need to pay for a big name school if your career doesn't necessarily make that big of a difference in your career trajectory? Next, how happy will you be there? So a lot of things to consider here, the diversity of the campus, how big it is, how competitive, what's the culture there? Do they have the extracurriculars that you like? The residential life, is that important for you? And I'll say, different strokes for different folks. Do you want a closed campus with only student body on the campus, or do you want an open campus where, when you go in between classes, you may need to take the bus or the subway, or you'll meet a lot of random local people, just because you're just right out there in the streets, which is great if you want to experience that. I know for me, I was very used to this open campus sort of thing, but I wanted something completely new. When I thought about what the college experience should be like, I thought, okay, I want to be on a grassy lawn and I want to be under a tree and people are playing hacky sack and I'm reading books. So as I was going through my shoebox, I would one of my first screening things is I would pick up the pamphlet, and whether or not there was enough grass in the first couple of pages, I would toss aside um, whether or not I wanted to go there. And then also extracurriculars. So my choice B was really cool when I was trying to decide whether or not to go there, because I was like, oh, I really want to learn Japanese because I'm really into anime, and choice B has a Japanese language choice, and it has swimming, and I was on the swim team in high school, so that'll be really cool. So those were some of the things that helped push my choice A and choice B high up on my list. Next, how much will it cost you? What goes into the cost, tuition and fees, cost of living in the area, how much financial aid and scholarships you'll get, what's the student loan burden? Are there opportunities for you to work a part-time job? So you got to think about that as well as other hidden fees, because it's not just the tuition that you pay there. There's sometimes the meal plan you have to think about if you're living on campus or off campus. And the way I think about this is college is an investment. It's an investment in your future. It's a great place for you to go and have that college experience, one, of course, but also what you do in college really strongly affects your trajectory into the future. So you really need to take that cost balance into consideration. As I said, if you are very ambitious and you want to go to the top places that tend to be more expensive, you have to say to yourself, is this cost worth it? You know, is that name recognition going to open doors that I need in my career? Um, is this going to prepare me for the field that I want? Because even if you go to a place that's expensive, but they don't have a whole lot of support for your future ambitions, it's not gonna help you that much. Um, and then also, even if it is expensive, yeah, it may be expensive, but then um, high risk, high reward kind of, you know, you pay for what you get for it. All to say that if you go to college and pay a high tuition, it's particularly advantageous and you'll have a better ROI, return on investment, if you go into a high paying field to help pay off whatever those fees are. So it's important to take that into consideration. And then also, do you have supplemental funds to pay for your education? You know, some of you may have some of that old money, so you got some 529 plans saved up or some old bonds that you can whip out. So you really need to think, is the juice worth the squeeze? And it is worth it, depending on, it can be worth it depending on the career that you go into and the experience that you want from it. So some of you may say, if it's really expensive, what are, you know, maybe regardless of all that, cost is very important to you. With that, you know, what are the less expensive options that you can consider? That's where kind of trade schools come in. There are a number of different fields you can go into. Here's just a short list: healthcare, skilled trades, tech, you know, person who's maybe a medical assistant, dental hygienist, electrician, cosmetology, those kinds of things. How do these compare to 2 and 4 year colleges? Um, they're shorter as opposed to a 4 year college. They're usually around 6 to 2 months. You get a certificate or diploma at the end of it. The focus is more on hands-on job-specific skills. The cost is generally lower than college, especially since you're there for a short amount of time. It's usually open enrollment, so it's usually not too difficult to get in there. And your career outcomes direct to work, so you can usually go straight into work once you go in there. Um, so why should you choose one over the other? And how do you know if trade school may be for you? So I made a little list, pros, cons, right here. What are the pros? As we talked about, shorter time, shorter cost. You can go right into the work. Um, a lot of them tend to be high demand fields. And it's a faster path to earning money and increasing your net income because you have less debt. And if you pick the right one, they can have relatively high income starting out. The cons, limited career flexibility. You can imagine if maybe you did a trade school for welding and then you came out of trade school and maybe you broke both of your hands and now you can't weld anymore. You can't really do much with your welding certificate in other places, as opposed to maybe if you had a bachelor's degree. Um, and you know, nowadays, employers, depending on what you want to go into, they prefer degrees for higher level roles. So it may kind of cap you on how high you can go in the future, both in regards to your position as well as your pay. And you know, you'll have that less traditional college experience. A lot of people usually may live from home or just commute there. And some of the programs may not be eligible for federal aid. So we talk a lot about money, 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 money. So, you know, I also want to be sure to help you guys out um, and give you some resources for scholarships. So here are a bunch of different search engines you can take a look at. You can also find out about scholarships from your school, your guidance counselors. If you look around, you go to the guidance counselors, look at the bulletin board, there'll usually be a bunch of opportunities for local scholarships. And go to the college website. There may be some list for scholarship for financial aid. And you can also get smaller ones from your community and other places like churches, nonprofits, etc. And here are some over there. And a little pro tip for you guys, um, you know, college can be expensive. And a lot of times people are intimidated by intimidated by applying for scholarships. What a lot of people don't know is that they may not be as competitive as you think because a lot of people have that mindset. Number one, a lot of people don't actually go and look for scholarships unless somebody, their guidance counselor, gives you the paper and say, fill this out so you can get this scholarship. A lot of people don't go and search for them. So next, by searching, you're already ahead of the game. Next, apply early. Um, Scholarships as well as regular admissions tend to be rolling, which means that as people get requests, they usually fill up. So both for colleges and for scholarships, the earlier you apply, generally you increases your chances of actually getting the scholarship. Next, actually complete the application. Not to say anything, but sometimes, not you guys, I'm sure, but high school students, they're busy and they're not always super motivated to do all of these things. So if you even complete the application, you're probably already ahead of the game with the people who happen to even search for the scholarships and apply early. For me, I did that and I was at the cusp. I like applied for a couple of scholarships and actually just hit the deadline like the day before. And I actually got the Gates Millennium Scholarship. So Bill Gates helped to pay for my college. And that was a really competitive scholarship. And it actually supplemented um, my tuition, so I didn't actually have to pay much, and I didn't really need to take out loans in college, which was a big help. But I almost missed that deadline, so definitely apply early, and follow through. So some of the key takeaways from here, when you want to make your college list, check out search engines, your guidance counselors, word of mouth. To refine your list for colleges, think about the location, the environment, what it will do for your career, how happy will you be there, and what will it cost you. In a way, you can kind of organize all of that. You can make a spreadsheet and you can rank all those different things in different ways with different weights, and you can have Chat GPT or Excel tell you which one is the best decision. Or one thing that I do whenever I kind of have to make these somewhat big life decisions, i.e., choose a medical school, residency, fellowship, job, is I do the open envelope uh, test. So what I do is I pretend somebody gave me an envelope, and inside the envelope is a potential place I'm going to go. And I open it up and I look at what institution it is. And my gut feeling, that first 5 seconds before everything, well, you cost this much, well, it's over here, before all that stuff can even get into your mind, subconsciously, you have a gut feeling of how much you want to go there. So if you open it up and it says, oh, William and Mary, and you're like, yeah, you're really happy. And you're like, that's a good sign that you may be making a good decision. But if you open it up, and even though William and Mary may look great on paper, but you're like, do you feel this little slight FOMO, a little bit of depression? That may be a sign that maybe that place is not for you. And you may want to consider other options. So that's really one good way you can help you figure out the happiness level. So, spoiler, I want you guys know I went to Notre Dame. I got that grassy um, campus that I wanted. It's actually ranked as I think number 3 in the most beautiful campuses in the country. Um, it was a great environment in regards to diversity. Some people may say, "Oh, Fighting Irish, that doesn't sound diverse," and I was just like, "Why do I have to be Irish? I'm Nigerian." But there was actually a lot of diversity if you actually look. So I made friends in all groups of colors, went to lots of different cultural events, luau's. I was actually voted most Asian when I graduated. So I beat out international kids, which is something I'm proud of. And I also got to celebrate my own culture. Here's me giving a speech during Africa Week. I was the president during my senior year. I got to experience some interesting weather. And the campus had some very cool traditions. So the first snow of every year, everybody would come out onto the lawn and there'd be a giant campus-wide snowball fight. So here's me on that day. Opportunities wise, Notre Dame definitely opened up opportunities for me in regards to the alumni network. I got a lot of job opportunities and work opportunities, and I actually got voted Domer Dozen. So it's for being one of the most accomplished alumni. Um, so here's me coming back to do that speech. I got the chance to do research, which I still talk about sometimes when I go on job interviews. I'm really into service work. I got to do some medically related work. And here's me doing some service work there. Sports wise, I was the president of the dance group over there. I took up boxing. Here's actually me on ESPN as a college student. And I actually played Quidditch. So here's me actually. I was the seeker, and I caught the snitch, and here's me winning. Love the campus life, got to go to football games, pep rallies. Here's my crew actually performing at the pep rally, and here's me doing the worm in front of the whole school. They had again fun traditions. So, here's me on Halloween. I made a costume. I'm a Ghostbuster, and she's saying, "Who you gonna call?" And here's me, a Ghostbuster. And here's me on St. Patrick's Day. You see, a diverse group of friends. Right. And so next, we talked about how do you choose a college major? This is something that's really important. Maybe now you're ready, you've refined your list, but you're also like, how do I choose what major? I don't know. Oh, go Irish, I see you out there. Um, Again, as I said before, college is an investment in your future. The way I kind of think about it is it's a garden. Um, it's a garden to your future. Your seed, your major is the seed, and you put your seed in the soil, which is the institution, and the effort you put into it is the water that helps it grow. So when choosing your major, i.e., choosing the seed, you have to think, what do you want? How much fruit do you actually want? Depending on your major, if you want fast, if you want fruit fast, that'll choose your major. If you want to just make money quick as soon as possible, maybe you want to go to trade school. Maybe you're okay with delayed gratification, and maybe you want to slowly produce your fruit. Sometimes that'll mean, okay, 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of graduate school, and then a couple more years of residency, and then you'll make some really big money. So if you're okay with delayed gratification, which studies have shown the most successful people are into delayed gratification, you choose your majors based off of that. Maybe you don't need a lot of fruit. Maybe you're maybe you're a minimalist. Maybe you don't need a lot of money to be happy. Maybe you already have a lot of money. So you don't need a major that gives you a lot of money. Or maybe you have plans to marry somebody who has a lot of money. So it kind of doesn't matter. Or maybe you want to make a lot of money. So you want to pick a career that'll help you pay for your lifestyle. Maybe you want your significant other to not have to work. So you want to have a single income household. So then you want to pick a job that'll give you more money. So where you are, what kind of seed you can kind of put into this thing. This is called ikagi. It's a Japanese way of thought that's basically your reason for being. So when choosing your goal in life, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. You could things to consider. You could think about what you love to do. You could think about what you're good at, what the world needs, and what can you be paid for. So a lot of these things may not necessarily overlap. You may love to do puppeteering, but you may not be paid a lot for that. And maybe the world doesn't need a lot of that. But maybe you're really good at it. Then in that case, it's a passion. If it's something that the world needs and you could be paid for it, then it's a calling you can develop. If it's something that you're really good at, but you may not love it, you're really good at it, or you can be paid for it, that will be your expertise. But if you can find all of those things, then you have Ikagi. So those are the things you should think about when you choose your major. Where do you want your seed to be? So going along this fruit analogy, how much fruit do you want in your basket? Which basically means what kind of lifestyle do you want for your future? So over here, I have the different kind of classes that you can kind of put yourself in so you can have a better idea um, of how much you want to make depending on the what kind of lifestyle you want. And here we have over the composition, what kind of class do you need to be? What kind of class usually best affords that? And how much income do you need? So if you're low income, you're usually struggling with the basic needs of housing and such. This usually include minimum wage workers, part-time workers, those with unstable employment. Lower middle class, and it's middle class here, and it's kind of lower, middle, and upper. Lower middle class covers the basic expenses, but you may face some financial insecurity, limited savings, so maybe a little bit more paycheck to paycheck sort of thing. Um, and these are sometimes some of the skilled trades, clerical work, service workers. And these types of people usually make around 50 to 75,000. Middle class has, kind of that right in the middle, enjoys financial stability, has a home, has some extra savings. This usually includes professionals, teachers, managers, basically living a mid lifestyle, modest vacation, savings, retirement. These types of people usually make 75 to 150K. There's upper middle class, which is the usually highly educated professionals with a strong income and comfortable lifestyles. So these people may include doctors, lawyers, engineers, executives. These kind of people are usually somewhere in the 150 to 250K. And you see that's about 7 to 8% of households. And then there's the upper class, which are wealthy individuals who enjoy the luxuries of life. And these people are usually CEOs, major business owners, celebrities, wealthy investors. And these types of people usually make more than 250K. And then the upper echelon, it's in the top 1% is usually at least more than 500K. So just based off that, you guys in the chat, let me know where you think how much fruit you want. So we'll rank it from 1 to 5 down here. So 1, low income, and upper class, 5. Um, Yes, and anything in between. And this is just to kind of gauge so I know kind of where to direct things. And there's nothing wrong with being in any place. Some people just don't need as much. I necessarily don't need as much, but my wife is Igbo and she comes from one of the expensive states, so I need to pay for her lifestyle. So um So, over here we had what the income range is with the median income. Median, for those of you who don't know, basically means the most, not necessarily the average, but most of the people in this category have this income. So how much you make will get you only a certain distance depending on where you live. So your dollar only goes so far. So here I have 2 different ways you can kind of think of it. So this is the median income by state. And as you can see, the median income on one end of the spectrum, Mississippi is 47K, while California is 124K. So what's middle class in Mississippi is 47, while that same amount would put you in lower income in California. Another way you can look at it is what's the relative value of $100 in each state. So as you can see, like California, your $100 was about worth $85, while Mississippi, it's worth like 115. So those are important things to think about as you're thinking about where you want to put your class. What class you want to be in is what state do you want to live in and live comfortably. So how much fruit do you need to be satisfied by state? So I see a lot of you guys chose middle class to upper middle class. So I figured you would say that. So I have here so you can kind of see what it takes to be in the middle class in each one of these states. So you can see the red one again in California, which is where I live and feel that, is, you, to be in the middle class, not even upper middle class, is low 100Ks, versus places that are blue like Oklahoma. So as part of this talk, how much soil do you need for your fruit? So for these median outcomes, here's what kind of education is usually associated. So for those with no high school diploma, usually they are at the lower end, as you can see there. If you just have a high school diploma, it's looking like your income will likely be somewhere around the 50K-ish, which is the lower middle class. And then you can see basically as you get more education, your potential for more income increases. Now, of course, these are just medians, so there's people on both ends. There's some people with high level PhDs who may be making as much as a high school diploma person. And then maybe somebody with a high school diploma who has a bunch of connections and maybe they're talented in one of the arts and they may be up in the higher end. And yes, I saw, is there a recording of this? So yes, there will be a recording. Follow me on my social media, which I'll share later, and it'll be there. So the key takeaways, um, get them seeds, figure out what kind of seed you want. The the median US income, household income is around 75K. A lot of you, if you want to live comfortably, middle class is the place to be. And remember that when you're choosing how much you want, where you live affects how far your money goes. So some of the considerations also, if you're like, okay, I want to be middle class in this area, also consider, what are your plans for marriage? Do you think you want to do a dual income? In which case, maybe your spouse's income can help supplement what the cost of living is. Or if you're single income, do you want your spouse to be able to stay at home and maybe take care of the kids? You're going to need a higher paying job if you want your family to live comfortably. And then also, do you have generational wealth? Do you already have some money stashed away to help supplement all of this? Now, how many types of seeds? Now you're like, okay, you saw that list and you're like, okay, I know how much I want to make. Which job is going to get me that money? There are about 300 to 400 recognized college majors. And you can even categorize them into 30 or 40 major fields. And this number is actually fluctuates. I actually recently saw an article where some colleges are getting rid of majors that aren't actually producing uh, a good cost of living for those that have it. So the major categories include things like business, engineering, health sciences, those kind of things. And then from there, each place can have something a little bit, each college can have something a little bit different, over 1,000 options. So instead of just engineering, do you want to do mechanical engineering, civil engineering, biomedical, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I made a list of this like 30 to 40 major categories. And we could talk later if you want me to share this with you. Um, so you can take a look at them. So I've listed the major categories and some examples of the specific majors, and then examples of future career and professions that you can go into based off of that. Let's give you a second to take that in. Got a little more for you. Now, the moment I think a lot of us have been waiting for is now that you have an idea of what are the majors. Now you got a lot of things. You're like, okay, I know what kind of fruit I want in the future. I know the bunch of seed that's available, but I don't know what's the correlation with the seed to the fruit. So I spent a lot of time on this, so I hope you guys enjoy this. So I've categorized them for you. Nerd alert. So I've got a couple of interesting data charts for you. So one of the things to consider when you're choosing a major, even if you know how much they make, is how fast and how slow are these careers growing? Because some things that is available as a major, you have to think, especially with the development of AI and the way the political socioeconomic system is, you know, you don't want to be the guy who's doing a major in horse and buggy when the car is just being invented. So here I have the top 15 slowest growing careers. And looking at this, you can kind of imagine why for some of them, like postal service workers, a lot of people are doing emails and digital type of thing or just getting the things off Amazon. So less of that. Bank tellers, a lot of people do bank telling. I do online banking. Telemarketers, now they're just getting robocalls. So I have the growth rates, the estimated growth rates over here. So the other interesting thing is, here's the median. Again, the median is how much most of the people make. You can expect within the first 5 years of graduating undergrad. Then I have it in 15 years because again, I'm really big on delayed gratification. Sometimes you don't see the biggest bang right from the beginning. Sometimes it takes time. And then you can even kind of see as you're getting closer to retirement, are you going to be a top tier kind of thing? And then the other thing you need to think about is what is the ROI, the return on investment? So here's the average student debt. And then you're like, okay, so student debt, instead of going back and forth, I have the debt to income ratio in the first 5 years and the 15 years. So over here, you can kind of see how much debt you'll be in. So that's some of the things I want to point out. So what I had here, I even color coded it for you guys. So the ones that are trades, kind of the blue collars type of jobs, I have it in blue over here. And over here, I have bolded what are the lowest median incomes. So um, you won't be making a whole lot if you decide to become a telemarketer, go into textile machine operator, or you become a switchboard operator. And then over here, which one will give you the most debt? If you go to college for this, if you become a postal worker, if you decide to become a logging worker, and a semiconductor processor. Okay, now that you know what the slowest ones are, what are the fastest? So over here, again, I have the ones in blue are the fastest growing. So, especially given the way things are, AI building up, we need more renewable energy. Here are the notes of why they are. You can see what the fastest growing careers are. So the blue ones are in trade school, and the ones that are orange, I kind of had the color for, this orange color is STEM. So I chose that color because it's like, oh, blood, or the sweat that you have to sweat and blood you put into your career. So as you can see, the fastest growing careers, there's a lot of predominance in STEM. And we got the same kind of information here, and as you can see, median income, so this would be probably by the time you're in your mid-30s. Some of the ones that make the most money are data scientists, information security analysis, software development, which makes sense, given the big changes in technology and AI. And the ones with the worst debt to income ratio, nurse practitioner, PAs, and audiologists. So a lot of growth, good amount of income, but you'll be in debt for a little bit. But as you can see, these numbers drop off once you have more time to pay for it. Okay, now that we know which one's the fastest and slowest, which one's going to get you money, 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 or the lowest. So we'll start from the bottom, work our way up. Yes. So lowest paying ones. As you can see, there are a couple of things in the trade, and there are a couple of the white ones are kind of the humanities, basically. And the things that I'll point out, the median income. So even after working for a while, you know, if you're in the culinary arts, you know, if you're lucky, you know, you'll have your own Michelin star place. But if you're not, you could be working at a cafeteria. Cosmetology and music. And, you know, again, this is a median. So a lot of people, that means basically if you go and you get a music major, you're likely will be kind of that struggling artist, more than likely, you know, uh, unless you're very talented, and you hit it big, you may not be able to get to that upper echelon. So that's something to consider, that, you know, choosing a career, how much of it is based off your actual skill versus you getting lucky. I think a month ago I saw this TikTok where they actually had like some really famous violinist that makes millions of dollars go play in the subway at New York, and people were just walking past them like they're just like, whatever, I don't care. So just to show that it's not always talent when it comes here, it's also luck. If you don't have the right networking, if you don't get lucky and have that person discover you, all your talent, though you may have it, may not come into fruition. And then here you can see in red which ones have the worst debt to income ratio: social work, theology, music, theater, arts. So it's hard. It's hard. This is why they call it a struggling artist. Okay, so now get to the money. The highest paying job. So as you can see, there's a lot of STEM up here, and there's also some trade positions as well. So here you can see the median. Top ones are doctors, dentists, and nurse anesthetists. So yeah, STEM. And then radiation therapy, elevator, installer, repair is also another example. Some things to also point out too, some things that people don't realize is that, you know, particularly for doctors, in the first 5 years after medical school, you don't make a lot of money because you're actually a student in medical school, not making any income. And then when you start residency, this is about how much you get as a resident. It's not till you finish your training that you then start making the big bucks. And then here, the debt to income ratio, you could, the ones in bold are the ones with the lowest debt to income ratio. And the ones with the highest are, you know, also physician, dentist, pharmacy. And, you know, this is kind of what I was talking about with the delayed gratification. And, you know, especially if you're not working the first 4 years of your life because you're in medical school, it's going to be high. But then you can see that there's a steep drop off after you start making more money. And there's also programs to help you repay your loans. At least there was. I actually got my loans paid off, which was great. So physicians usually have around 200K, and I got around 150K forgiven last year. Thanks to our guy Joe Biden. We'll see what our new guy is doing, but you know, nobody knows. But there's likely will be some sort of loan forgiveness. And if not, hopefully you'll be in a specialty that it won't be that difficult to pay off. So you know, I gifted neighbor, we do focus on STEM and medicine, so I did put the STEM one just there by itself. So some of these, so just focusing on it, you could see some of the highest paying median incomes. Just looking at the STEM ones include nurse practitioner, doctor, dentist. Nurses also do very well. So, and PAs. So it's interesting because I remember back when I was a medical student and a resident, my friends that were nurses and PAs were making more than me. And I was like, man, you guys are so lucky. You got less school and you're making more money. And it's like, yeah. In a couple of years, Adebola, you'll be making more than us. So, you know, of the healthcare paths, some interesting insight is that being a nurse, particularly a nurse practitioner or a nurse anesthetist, is probably one of the best debt to income ratios, as you can see over here. Sometimes you only require a bachelor's degree unless you go higher. So you can get the big bucks without a lot of the debt. And the reason why the debt is higher for doctors is because we also have to pay for medical school as well. Okay. So something that was interesting about that list is that these are based off of majors for the most part. So with that being said, you may have noticed like, oh, lawyer wasn't on the list. Why? I know somebody who's a lawyer who's making a lot of money. So one thing I wanted to point out is that your major for certain careers don't completely align with what you do later on. I say that because, and this is very important for you to know as you're picking your careers, for things such as law and medicine, you don't necessarily need to pick the highest science major. Maybe we'll say biochem to be a science major. Because some of the things, in order to apply to medical school, you just need to take certain classes, which include biology 1 and 2, calc 1 and 2, organic chemistry 1 and 2, and general chemistry 1 and 2. So you can kind of actually do that with almost any major. It's just that the science majors better integrate that into your curriculum. So you could be a history major and wind up being a doctor, realizing that if your program doesn't integrate it too well, it may be you taking more required classes if you're that major. It's also not necessarily advantageous to take the most difficult science major. I can tell you, being on the selection committee for medical schools, we're not super impressed. We're like, oh, okay, biochem, whatever. You nerded out a little bit in medicine in undergrad. We just look at what your science grades are, and this is important because looking at my friends who were in undergrad with me, what were our majors and what was our outcomes? I was science pre-professional, then it was arts and letters pre-professional, which had more liberal arts classes. And then I had people in the tough biology, biochem majors. And the people in the biochem majors, they had to take tougher science classes. Because they were more difficult, their science GPA, separated from the regular GPA, was lower. So when it came to us applying, we all applied to relatively the same places. But some of my friends who were bio majors and missed football games because they were stuck in the library, they weren't successful into matriculating into medical school after undergrad. It took them a couple of years. They had to finish undergrad, do a post-bac, get their science GPA up, and then apply. And then they took an extra, I've seen 3 to 5 years to finish their residency training. With that being said as well, similarly, being a lawyer, you can have a history major, you can have a poli-sci major, but someone who's a history major could also wind up being a teacher. So that's why it wasn't necessarily in the highest paid majors. But you can see, just looking at the highest paid careers, you can see lawyers, engineer, doctor, up there. So your parents aren't just making it up when they pick those things out. It wasn't just out of a hat. But you can also do very well going into finance, or if you wanted to pick a trade, being a plumber. So these people, they make a good amount coming out, but you can see that it's kind of capped a little bit. If you go here, 60 doubles through the course of most of your adult life, while over here it quadruples in the first part of your adult life. And that was a very interesting time for me to, be a struggling post-grad. And then all of a sudden I was like, so you want to pay me 4 times what I was getting paid last year? And it's not unheard of that doctors get paid, depending on your specialty, in the 50 to 800K range. But, as we talked about, there is some debt associated with it, but you can see that it eventually goes down. So some of the big takeaways, if you're thinking about STEM and other professional degrees, remember it's delayed gratification, so your earnings will kick in after a couple of years. The ROI takes a while because you have to pay for graduate school, so more debt. But some of the best ROIs is nursing. And some of the other STEM majors that have the highest earnings right after undergrad without needing to necessarily go to grad school include engineering, computer science, those types of things. If you go into the humanities, those are kind of more of the performing arts, communications. They have a wider income range because a lot of it will depend on personal success, networking, location, luck. These tend to be, remember that ikagi thing that I showed you, more of the more passion-driven fields. Don't necessarily, and they also don't necessarily have the lower income. They don't necessarily have a higher income, so they're more likely to have a lower ROI. If you want to go into a trade, electrician, plumber, wind, solar, they usually would earn more with less debt. But make sure you pick the right one, because if you go into cosmetology, animal care, not including veterinarian, just more of some of the other ones, they have a lower starting pay and a more stagnant growth. But even with all of these, there's variations on both sides. So your drive, entrepreneurship, networking, which, the alumni part that I told you about, could help overcome those averages. So thinking about where you want your, does your minor have to, okay, I'll answer that. There's a question that popped up. The things to consider in regards to choosing what seed you want is, where do you want to be in this ikagi Venn diagram? How much income do you want to have in the future? What's the best soil to grow your seed based off the amount of fruit you will need, i.e. your institution? And I would recommend you water, no matter which one you want to be. If you want to be successful, make sure you water, put in as much effort as you can as possible to get the best outcome. And, just ending off on my growth, I'm definitely a delayed gratification kind of person. Most of the happiness that I have in my life has occurred in the last 3, 4 years, around the time that I finished my medical school training and I met my lovely wife, and we have a great lifestyle. I have a nice car and I'm able to provide for my family. We have a lot of financial security, so we can have things and go places and not have to worry about necessarily, where's the next paycheck gonna come? So I think particularly having that financial security and not worry is one of the best stress relievers in my life, especially having this beautiful lady there. You can see you may be able to pull dimes too. It doesn't hurt to be a doctor. Okay. And that's what I had. What is your website? Jomi just put in there. This is a QR code, so you can scan that, or you can go here, and there's a lot of our information there. So, for our nonprofit. So there will be a link there if you're interested in getting some mentoring. You fill that out and we'll email you to set up a session. And then our social media is also there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. The video will be on YouTube as well. And follow, like, subscribe. We put on some inspirational opportunities in all those different places. So thank you for your time, and I'll take some questions now. I don't see any in the chat. I do see one. And I'll answer that. And as I answer it, you guys think if you do have questions, either put it in the chat or feel free to just unmute yourself and ask. So the question that was raised is, does your minor have to be relative to your major? No, it does not. It's helpful for it to be complementary, though. So I'll give you two different ways you can think about your minor. I was a science pre-professional, and I chose a Spanish minor. I chose Spanish for me strategically because I knew in the medical field, especially growing up in New York, that there's a lot of personas que hablan español en los Estados Unidos. So being able to speak Spanish gave me a competitive edge. when applying for different things. But it doesn't need to be that. So with that, I'm glad you asked that. What if you feel inclined, what if you want have this amount of fruit, but your passions are in another place that doesn't necessarily yield a bunch of fruit? So what you could do with that is you can go to college and get a major that's most likely will help you get the fruit that you want, but you can always take classes and electives that are aligned with your interests that may not make you as much money. So, as an example, I really love dancing. I didn't need to become a dance major, but I joined extracurriculars that let me do that. I was the president of our dance group, and then actually when I went to medical school, I continued that, and I wound up battling some world class breakdancers during my time there. So if you're also torn between your major and your passion on the Ikagi, this is me. Of course, I'm not telling you what to do. It may be more beneficial for you to pick a career that's most likely to get you the fruit that you want. And then you can always do the things that you're passionate about on the side as an elective, as a minor, or even as an extracurricular. Okay. So now I'll invite you to ask any questions that you may have. Feel free to unmute yourself. And while I'll give you guys a little bit of time to ask any more questions, I spent a lot of time actually making these charts. So I actually have it on Excel. So you can actually go and you can filter by that. So if you actually are interested in getting your hands on some of these charts, so you can like literally just think how much fruit do I want and then just pick out the seed from the charts, subscribe to any of our social media and send me a message and I'll be happy to send it. Or also more than welcome, if you also want to use this, you can donate to us through GiveButter or Zelle, and just be sure to put your email address, and I also send it to you as well.
Dr. Giwa, thank you so much for a very informative and insightful discussion this afternoon. There is a question in the chart. Somebody's asking in the chat, somebody's asking, any thoughts on community college and then transitioning to a bigger school?
Okay. I will say about that is not a bad idea, but you need to take a couple of things into consideration. One, as a caveat, I'll give you an example. I have a friend who went through that path. He went to community college in California, then transferred to I think a state university in California, and then we wound up going to the same medical school. And now he's a successful plastic surgeon, and he has his own nonprofit. So you can definitely go that route and be successful. But the thing you need to also think about is the chance game, because you do 2 years at your college, at a community college, and then you need to apply. So it's a different application pool. The places that you may want to go may not have that many spaces um, for people coming in as juniors. So realize it'll be more difficult, more competitive to get into a 4-year school. It may take you a little bit more time, and you may be limited in your options of places you want to go. It's probably better to start if you want to forego that stress, to start with a 4-year college. But sometimes people have lots of different situations financially or opportunity wise, so you can community college is not a bad idea. I've friends and family have gone that route, and they're doing well now.
Thank you very much. There's another question in the chat. How does one access your one-on-one mentoring, and how does a kid schedule to meet with you?
That's a great question. So I'm going to stop the share real quick, and I'll show you. So you can use that link, .cards.tgn. And then one of the first links. I'll put it there. Dot. Oh, did I drop out of the meeting? Okay, cool. I'm still here. I was like, whoops, that would be awkward. Here we go. Here we go. So yeah, you .card/TGN and you'll be taken right here. And all you gotta do just click mentorship application and write down what you want, and we'll send you an email. So you can just sign up that way.
Same line,
And then
along the same line, there's a question about how much is the one-on-one mentoring?
okay. Yes. So, this first call with me is it's complimentary because these people who joined us on this call. So that's all free. How much is mentoring depends on how much you need. So with that, I've been helping people of all different levels of competitiveness and different levels from high school up to medical school, get into residency, get to fellowship, etc. So I have these relatively in-depth sessions where I walk them through the whole application process. So I both help them draft their answers to all the questions and refine it so it's exactly what the program committee wants to see and hear. If they've applied before in the past unsuccessfully, I'll go through their past application, personal statement, and we'll work through that and make sure that it's great. And then also other things that I do are interviewing as well. So we'll do mock interviews and tell you all the questions that you'll likely to hear and make sure that you get the results that you want. And I have about a 95% matriculation rate. So all my mentees that have come to me, whether they've had failed tests, failed attempts at prior applications, 95% of them the next year after getting mentored by me go on to successfully matriculate. With the others that don't, usually they didn't come to many sessions. And yes, and then if it's just kind of one-off questions, those will be free. So it all kind of depends on the level of service that you would like.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So sounds like after the first complimentary meeting, and then you have a plan with the individual, and then talk about the cost of the plan.
Yes, and now we'll have a complete breakdown, and it's all there for you. And then also, if you want me to speak to other groups of people, also feel free to email me as well. I also do talks and many different levels related to STEM and otherwise. I just did a talk last week on how to network for medical students.
Fantastic. We have another question in the chat. Does early action affect merit scholarships?
You can still get merit scholarships if you do early action. Probably the only caveat is just timing. If you do early action, you'll probably know December, January. Merit scholarships, depending on when you file your FAFSA, sometimes you may not get that until March, April. But every program's a little bit different. But you're not less likely to get merit scholarships if you do early action.
Okay. The next question, does going to a big name college have that much impact in getting into grad school, i.e. med school, law school, etc.?
That's a great question. And I'm going to be honest with you guys because I want to give you the pro tips, and life is just kind of like that. It does affect. It does affect getting into graduate schools. Now, it's not, if your school isn't ranked this much, you cannot get into the highest ranked school. If you go to maybe a small liberal arts school in your neighborhood, that doesn't mean you can't get into Yale, Hopkins, Harvard. though it will be more difficult. Schools know other schools' reputation. So they also realize, if you think about it, if you're applying to Hopkins and somebody comes in and gives you their transcript, and the transcript has a both transcripts have a 3.0 science GPA, you know, as an admission person, that it may be easier for somebody to get a science GPA in maybe a small liberal arts school versus if they have a 3.0 GPA at Harvard. So they take that into account when they look at competitiveness. And then also some schools and programs, graduate schools, they have reputations, a little bit of pipelines that, oh, and you guys probably also know, maybe even when you went into high school, hey, oh, you went to this grade school? Oh, we have lots of your people here. Come on, we know you have great quality people. Similarly, oh, you went to this undergrad? Oh, we got a lot of people from this undergrad over here. And we know that they make great medical students. So their reputation will help you as well. So to answer your question, it will, if you have a big name college, and the name also will depend on your major, because I'll say, for example, Marquette is known for engineering. Even though it's a big name in engineering, if you're applying to medical school, it won't carry as much weight at a medical school as maybe if you went and did undergrad at Hopkins. So the name will help you get into graduate schools easier, but it's not the be all end all. I've seen people at Hopkins who went to uh, medical schools and undergrads that I've never heard of.
Thank you, Dr. Giwa. We have another question. This is a more kind of individualized question. What major in pre-med would you advise to a junior looking towards being a CRNA?
That's a good question, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying in regards to, do you need to pick a major, a difficult science major, to get into certain science fields? So nursing is also one of those majors as well, where you don't necessarily need to be a microbiologist and take all the hardest science classes to apply to become a CRNA. As long as you take the right classes, you can take the right, as long as you can pick, technically you can pick any major, and as long as you take the right classes, you can apply to CRNA school. I would recommend you taking a somewhat science-based class, science-based major. If you wanted to go into medicine, that way it better integrates into your schedule. So it's not like you're a film and television major, and then most of your classes are based off of that. And now you're going to have a packed schedule to fill in those science classes. So in regards to majors, I mentioned there's hundreds and thousands. So it'll be more based off of what programs you're looking for. Um, if you wanted to go over that, you could apply for mentorship. And the first call, I also answer as many questions as you like that you may have that are free. So if you wanted to like run down a list of colleges and potential majors, we could do that. And my wife's on the call, and she's actually a nurse, so she can feel free to opine if there's anything I missed.
All right, very good. So the last question we have currently, how much does taking a dual enrollment and the international baccalaureate classes, how much do those impact getting into a higher ranked school? Do schools favor the dual enrollment or the international baccalaureate more?
When you say dual enrollment, could you explain a little bit more what you mean about that? You talking about early enrollment, or are you talking
I,
about applying to multiple places?
John, if you're able to come on off mute and explain
You're
your
talking about
point, that would be great.
post-bac schools?
But I
Yeah.
think he's asking about dual enrollment as a high schooler taking college level classes.
Oh, okay. Um, so okay, awesome. So it's helpful getting into higher ranked schools. So when you think about it, I took a couple of AP classes when I was in high school. And when I applied to colleges, it goes in your application and it shows what kind of person you are, how smart you are, basically. How well did you do in those classes? So if you took those AP classes and did well in them, it'll help both your GPA and it'll also make you look smarter as well. So you'll be more competitive. Additionally, it'll be helpful when you are in college. Sometimes those classes can offset the classes that you need to take. So, for example, if I took AP Calculus in high school and I'm a pre-med major and I need to take Calc 1 and 2, it's possible that that calculus class that I took in high school will allow me to not need to take that calculus class in college, which will then free up my time so I can study for other things. So it is helpful to take AP classes. It'll make you look more competitive, but only take them as you can handle. If you take a bunch of AP classes and it drops your GPA, it will make you less competitive.
Along the same lines, somebody's asking, how about AP versus the IB classes, the International Baccalaureate classes?
They're about the same. That it's helpful if you do well in them.
All right, that's all the questions we have on the chat. If anybody has any last minute questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Also, feel free to come off camera, off mute, and ask your questions directly. So the last comment on dual degree. So you mean like double majoring, Noble? Okay. So last comment on double or dual degree.
Okay. That's a good question. And it's somewhat similar to the high school kind of thing. So I started off pre-med and I had not taken really Spanish before. I think I took one class in high school. So when I started Spanish in college, I started Spanish 101. But I really loved it and I made it my supplementary major. So it's kind of in between major and minor. So when I applied to medical school, it was a good look because it's like, hey, when I went on interviews, I can talk about how I speak Spanish and how I'll be able to talk to um, people of different backgrounds as a medical student and as a physician. So dual degree, if you have a dual degree, it's great with the caveat that if it drops your GPA because you're double majored, it's not going to help you. And then it also depends on what career you're going into and how helpful that is. So if you're pre-med in film and television and you have a degree in acting and you're going into engineering, chemical engineering, I don't think that, having a dual degree in engineering is having a degree in acting is going to help you with your job. But, in the example that I gave, if you're pre-med and you, for example, have another major in another language, that can help you. And then there's also, of course, the caveats. When those dual degrees, when I do my mentorship, I have a rubric that shows what programs look for, and one of them there's a slot for bonus points. So having a dual degree could help you, but it's be more specific to the person looking at your application. Because, I said, yeah, if you have a degree in acting and you're applying to be a chemical engineer, it's not going to help you. But if your interviewer loves acting and wants to get into that business on the side, or maybe he does stand-up comedy on the side, he'd be like, oh, this guy would be great. I want him on my team. So for that, you need to be strategic. How will it possibly bring down your GP? How much will it help you get to your career? And will the help be offset by a potential drop in your major grades because you're doing double majors?
Thank you, Dr. Giwa. So back to the AP versus dual enrollment question. So Matilda is asking if colleges favor dual enrollment, given that it's
Oh,
college level classes in a college versus AP classes, which is where they're taking the classes in their high school. Which ones do you think the colleges favor?
taking college courses in college with your high school classes. Um,
So for dual enrollment kids, while they are in high school, with their principals and college counselors' permission,
oh, okay.
they go to a community college mostly and take
Yes, yes.
college level classes. Whereas in AP classes, it's right there in their school, and they take
Mhm.
them. So she's asking,
Yeah.
between
Is
the
there a
two,
difference?
which ones do you think the colleges favor more?
Um, I stand by my first statement. I'll be honest, we don't always see a whole lot of that, but when we see it, think about there's something I do with my mentees. I have them wear the hat of the admissions counselor. So now you have somebody coming to you. So it depends on how well you did in those classes. Um, so yes, both will increase your competitiveness because it shows that you did well in college level courses. So that'd be like, so then they'll think, okay, this person will do well in our school and it's more likely to succeed and will improve our stats. So both of them do well. So they don't look at dual enrollment less favorably. Um, and I'll say that one will really more depend on the individual admissions person, and that they may be like, oh, they may take note and be like, oh, that'll be more difficult. They have to go on the weekends and take night classes. Um, so that's more of a subconscious bias. They'll probably go in the same place and they're like, oh, this person's taking advanced courses. They get bonus points for this. But whether it's dual enrollment or AP classes, that'll be more of a subconscious bias. It's like, oh, you know what? You got to give them props for doing this at night and not having it not being easily integrated into their high school schedule.
I think another consideration is that AP classes appear to be more universally acceptable, whereas for the dual enrollment classes, you want to be sure that the college you're looking to get into does accept external credits.
Mhm. That's a good nuance.
All right, we don't have any more questions in the chat. Um, It's been very, very informational and insightful, learning a lot from you, Dr. Giwa, and to our audience for your participation. All the questions helped us expand more the conversation a little bit more. So thank you. And we'll be sure to keep you informed when the next conversation will be scheduled. And as Dr. Giwa had mentioned, please get on his social media platforms and get in contact with him. I think the complimentary one-on-one mentoring, it's really a very valuable resource. So please tap into that.
Yes, thank you all for coming out. And I wish you all luck in the next coming years as you're choosing your college. And I say some people say high school is the best 4 years of their life, but I say that those people probably didn't go to college because college definitely was the best 4 years of my life from the experience that I had and the friends that I made. The guy who was my best friend in college. We had all of our classes together. People couldn't separate us. I was his best man. He was my best man. He was in my ASHOB. He's the godfather of my first kid. You're gonna make some lifelong friends and have some of the most memorable experiences there. So I hope your next move is your best move. See what I did there. Okay, thank you all. Have a great night and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.